Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, what's going on?
Everything. Lane, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm well. No complaints. Hump day.
Hump day. All right. Today the show is going to be extremely short. We have a few issues that we need to deal with. So we want to give you guys a little bit of something. So hold on one second. Nikki will not be joining us today. She's around, but she's handling some things. And we didn't want to cancel at the last minute. So I think today's topic was, give me a second, and I have it right here. What is the topic for today?
What's the topic of today? Let's see.
I got it.
You got it?
Yeah. Can we really believe his story, His-tory? What's behind Harriet Tubman and the unknown railroad? Not the underground, but the unknown railroad. Can we really believe that? And I guess if we were going to do a full show, we were going to get into our second topic, which was Black children and the state of education. Do Black children have a chance in the American future or the new American future? So I don't know which one you guys want to jump on first. If we have anybody out there that's listening, anything that you want to comment on. First topic is, can we really believe his story? His-tory. What's behind Harriet Tubman and the unknown railroad? So I received an YouTube the other day, basically debunking the whole Harriet Tubman story, that it was fabricated. So I've put it out to a few people, and I've got some positive feedback. Kyle, Elena, anything you guys want to say regarding what your take is on Harriet Tubman and the underground / what I call the unknown railroad?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about it being a falsehood, so this is all news to me. But I think the story is tremendous, if factual. But it's kind of disturbing that I guess the narrative is being put out that it may not be. So a lot of times, like what you're saying about his story, we get left in a position of we don't know what to think, And I think now I'm in that boat with this story.
Gotcha. So I mean, what do you think? You think it's possible that it could have been fabricated?
I believe that it could probably be embellished, but I think it was founded on something. So, did she make 100 trips? Maybe that's not 100, or it doesn't matter. I think if she was active in doing what they said she was doing, which was freeing slaves, then if she made one trip is good enough for me.
Right. Before we go any further, this is what it said. Harriet Tubman is a fictional character created by an act of Congress and Sarah Bradford in 1869. For those who are interested, Harriet Tubman is a fictional character created by an act of Congress and Sarah Bradford in 1869.
Did it say why? Like, what was the narrative?
It's pretty intense. It's deep. I'll get it to you. Boy, or if you just want to put that in and it come up. But it goes into why it was created and some symbology then versus now. So I know Elena has had an opportunity to actually visit the Underground Railroad. So I haven't been.
I don't know if I would say I visited the railroad itself, but last year, I took a trip to the Eastern Shore of Maryland. To make it fun, I rented a convertible, and there's actually a Harriet Tubman driving tour. You can actually put an app on your phone that will give you directions and help you navigate from one site to the next, and it also has different narratives that you can play in between to kind of tell the story. It's actually very cool. And I was only able to do about half of it because it stretches all the way up the Eastern Shore of Maryland into Delaware. So it was interesting. I will say that the tour left me with more questions than it answered, though. And I think that there's definitely a lot to document. At a minimum, that what has been written about her has been embellished. I think she took more like 10 to 20 trips than 100. Some of the accounts talk about her as being a teacher, but she couldn't read, so there have definitely been some discrepancies in the stories that have been told about her over the years. And even for several of the different sites that I visited, there was a lot of conjecture. It's kind of like we think this is the land where she would have lived, but we don't really, no, it's all marshland. So that, that type of atmosphere isn't great for preservational purposes anyways. But it was cool. I saw that great mural that everybody sees. So yeah, but there are definitely a lot of things about her that have been contested. I mean, starting with her name. Her name isn't actually Harriet Tubman. It's Araminta Ross. So, Harriet Tubman, kind of this caricature or, even possibly this myth grew out of maybe the reality of a real person whose real life story may not reflect, what's been told to us in history. I guess the question for me is, why do you think that they would do that? Why change the story? Why create this character or this myth? Because I think, if you look at American history, especially from an African American history perspective, if for a few people that you learn about in elementary school, you learn about Harriet Tubman, you learn about Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth. Like those are the, in the Black history pantheon. So I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about that. Like if it's not the true story, then why embellish it or create it?
What you think, Kyle?
I have no idea why the American government would create a story creating a female Black hero when, if you looked at that time period, when white women didn't have that many, they didn't have the right to vote. They couldn't loan. I don't know in the 1860s if they could own land. I don't think they could own land. So for them not to have rights, then to create a Black female superhero, and that's done by the government, it just seems like it's a little far-fetched.
I don't know. I mean, I think about the whole Willie Lynch letter as well. Do I think that was an actual letter? No, I don't. Do I think someone actually, I don't think that Willie Lynch ever existed. I think someone gave that name and also created that letter because the terminology was too updated. Not just updated, it was too updated. It was right on point. It was accurate. It would be the equivalent of someone rewriting the Willie Lynch letter in 2021. What terminology would you use? We would use social media, even down to maybe describing what type of cell phones that they used. What if someone came out and said, and we'll create distrust between the Samsung users and the iPhone users, which ones are better, and then all of that. So Jabari said, I agree. So, I look at it like this. You said, why would the U.S. government do that? Any group of people that can orchestrate enslaving another people, can do anything. And I think one thing about the whole not Willie Lynch, but the whole Harriet Tubman, it's giving us something, diverting our attention to something. If we can get them every year talking about Harriet Tubman and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, then if they focus in on just one thing, we can do everything else. Jabari said unvaccinated versus vaccinated. That's another one. That's going to be, we can include that in the Willie Lynch letter. You know what I'm saying? We'll take the ones that, if I'm correct, Jabari, we can take the ones that have been vaccinated and have them oppose the ones who haven't been. So I think it's a whole bunch of distractions or red herrings that are out here right about now. And Harriet Tubman, and it's, don't get me wrong, it's kind of disheartening because we've been teaching our kids that stuff. Harriet Tubman. You said, Kyle, that white women didn't even have those privileges and rights. I'm not here to argue if the Bible is fictitious or not. But there is a scripture in the Bible that says there will be a time in which children will be our oppressors and women will be our rulers. And now you're talking about putting Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill. They've been talking about that. So I think it's more of a distraction that we're dealing with than anything else. And we have a lot of distractions out here.
I will say, I think one thing that's important to consider, if something is, if this were an isolated incident, I think it would be a little easier to dismiss, right? But I think there's definitely a pattern of rewriting or creating history for persons of color. It's interesting. I mean, let's start with the fact that Alex Haley didn't write Roots. A white man did,
And it's the same white man that wrote the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Absolutely. So it's like, why are all of these white people telling the stories of persons of color? I recently learned that the autobiographical book about Billie Holiday, Lady Sings the Blues, was also written by someone of the Caucasian persuasion. Look, we can write, we can certainly chronicle our own history, but it's definitely questionable as to why those who oppress us always also want to be the authors of our history. It's at best is questionable and it's suspicious. So, if this conversation about Harriet Tubman was an isolated incident, it's like, but I think there's so many situations where we see history being rewritten over and over again. And to your point, Les, earlier you talked about like the distraction. I think even in different people's lives, the narrative creates a distraction. Like one of the things that annoys me more than everything every year for the MLK holiday, look, I Have a Dream speech. That was a great speech. I like it too. But everybody wants to ignore some of the other things that he said. How about his last speech where he said, I'm coming to get my check? Like nobody wants to talk about those speeches. So you have this narrative of a man who, was all about nonviolence. And there's another speech of his that talks about like this utopian blessed community. And that's what you want to, that's what you want to put out there about him. But he was so much more than that. Same with Malcolm X. You always want to depict him as a young, troubled man who went to jail and was a troublemaker and a rabble rouser when he was so much, he was so much more than that. His parents were huge Garvey followers of Garvey, and it's there's always more to the story. Buju Banton says that the half has never been told.
Buju Banton?
Buju Banton, yes.
You?
Huh?
Next thing you're gonna say is that you're down with the Wu-Tang Clan.
Oh man, you already know it.
Oh, you know.
Absolutely. Love
Right.
Wu-Tang.
The Wu-Tang Clan
forever.
ain't nothing to fuck with. Right, I got you. What you think, Kyle? Still hard to believe.
Nothing's hard to believe here. So, I don't know. I guess back to the other points that Elena was just making about we can write too, but can we get published? So you can write a book, put it on your shelf, and your friends can read it, and they come over, you let them borrow it. But mass distribution. So if they control the narrative, who's to know? But I don't see why they would put a positive person. Why would they put a Black person in such a positive light in that time? It seems like we were, first of all, we were property, and we gained our freedom. But then the policing system comes in, and then if you're loitering, you go to jail. So then you become a prisoner to the state and then enslaved again. So I don't see, maybe I just don't understand it. The Willie Lynch letter, they seem like they had so many more barbaric ways to control us. I'm pretty sure maybe there were some slave masters that wanted to use mind control on us, but it seems like all of the ways that they kept us in line were physical. So I don't think that the story, if it's true or false, Willie Lynch, true or false, at this point is helping or hurting us. I think we're in a place where that, like I think I've said on many shows, that it's every man for themselves, and we've lost this sense of community. So if we've lost the sense of the community, a story like this, like Harriet Tubman and what she did in great acts, we're not telling to our children. They may learn about it if we have a direct interest in it. I have a direct interest in Malcolm X. I'll teach my son something about that, or Martin Luther King. But I don't think we don't commonly share stories like that. And with this whole technological internet and age, there's so much information out there that people are always grasping at the next bit of information and not necessarily looking backwards to what happened. So I don't know if it affects us positively or negatively if it's not true.
I think go ahead.
No, just quickly, you said, why would they lift up such a positive figure of a powerful Black woman? And it makes me think about like the Beyoncés of the world. Now, Beehive, don't kill me. I'm not saying that she doesn't have skills, right? We've gone down this road before. But when you think about Beyonce, you can also say, man, but there are so many other people I know who are amazing singers, right? Or when you think about the movement, oftentimes the people who are remembered aren't necessarily the ones who made the greatest impact, When you think about excellence, sometimes it's not the person that's on the television screen or placed before you. It's the people that you've connected with, that you have seen like really be movers and shakers in the culture. And I think that one of the intentions around putting up false heroes before us is to decrease or to wipe away the real power and the effect of the real ones among us. I don't know if that makes sense, but the people who really are doing it, they're usually the ones who don't get the spotlight. They don't get the fame. Like, everybody's talking about Fred Hampton now, because of the movie, but he didn't have that kind of a spotlight back then, outside of a certain community. So yeah, I think it's the same reason. You put up a whitewashed version because everything can't be everything can't be brutal, right? If they just brutalized us all of the time, we would be no good to anybody. We wouldn't even be worthwhile pawns. But yeah. And the other thing you said, Kyle, about brutality, the interesting thing about brutality is that brutality is usually the first step in any form of mind control, whether it's physical brutality or mental and emotional brutality. The goal is to get the person to a point where you break their will. Once you've done that, like, you don't have to continue to be brutal. You don't have to continue to brutalize to the same degree. So I think that there's that's certainly something in the context of what you said, just food for thought.
That's a great point.
I think we with the whole Harriet Tubman story, it's been mythology turned reality.
Mm.
We've studied Greek mythology, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've never subscribed Greek mythology to a race of people in terms of know your history. You know, but they've given it to us. So we focus in on that. And based on, Kyle, what you said with the brutality, Elena, what you said, you know, I look at it as, you know, they did their job. Let them focus, let the Black people focus on your Harriet Tubmans and your, what's his name, Frederick Douglasses. You know, let's create all of this on this side, right? The real action is taking place on this side. So now we're at a place now where they're taking down statues. You know, they're now calling out General Lee, all types of folks, right? But we no longer have that generation of people, parents and grandparents that was pushing, you know, Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and Martin Luther King. So now we're dealing with something completely different. You know, we're dealing with multiculturalism. We're dealing with feminism. We're dealing with the LGBTQ movement. We're dealing with the feminization of Black men. And at the same time, you know, I think it's properly aligned, because out of all the people that you could have put on this $20 bill, why Harriet Tubman? You know, but not only that, why would you create a fictional character and make her look the way that she did? You know, not pleasing to the eye. You know, why would you do that? So I think mythology turned reality is what we're dealing with. And they did their job. If we can keep them focused on the past, and we're still getting hit with the past, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they came out with a Roots 2.0 in the next couple of years. You know, always something that's going to trigger and cause us to react, if that makes any sense.
That makes tons of sense. I think also sometimes by putting those narratives in front of us, it causes some to believe that some of those things are in the past when they're still extremely very present. You know, it is very much our present day reality. But you know, we're going to depict this in the past, you know, and so it causes us to, it kind of knocks us off of our square. We're not as vigilant. We're not as vigilant because the threats aren't as obvious.
Yeah. You know, this reminds me of the introduction to the Harlem Renaissance versus Marcus Garvey.
So like E.B. Du Bois versus Garvey?
Excuse me?
Like, is that like E.B. Du Bois versus Garvey?
Not understanding.
So E.B. Du Bois and Garvey were kind of on two different sides, like back to Africa. So is that what you're saying?
Correct. And you know, when they saw that Marcus Garvey was creating a movement, you know, he had intent, he had purpose, they came up with the Harlem Renaissance as a distraction. And a lot of Black people went directly to the Harlem Renaissance. And don't get me wrong, the Harlem Renaissance has done wonders. But now, when you ask a musician, what side would you rather be on? You want to be on the arts, the musician side, or you want to be on the business side? And you make more money on the business side than you do the entertainment side. So when you talk about this whole thing with Harriet Tubman and us focusing in on the survival and the struggle. And it seems like we're always on this struggle, and then everything else is going on. Bitcoin, well, let's throw cryptocurrency out there so people can make some money. But if we're always thinking about, how we're going to get over, how we're going to get through, then once again, that red herring is out there. And I personally believe that when it comes down to Harriet Tubman and a few other characters, that they were created by the government to keep us distracted.
My brother, you're going to have to say more about Bitcoin. You lost me right there, because Bitcoin and cryptocurrency has blessed my life.
No. But guess what? Right. I'm not shutting it. What I'm saying is that, you got folks who are so focused in on the past, they can't even get with the cryptocurrency.
Okay. All right. I got you. I hear you.
Right. Hear you. Jabari said, we only have 5 more minutes, guys. I want to read Jabari's comment. Jabari said, and they never talked about Black Wall Street that was happening at the same time of the Harlem Renaissance. My point exactly. And we already know what's going to happen once, we build again. We rebuild. It's going to get torn down again, in my opinion. Kyle?
I think that's part of the reason that we don't unite. So if you look at the Black Panthers and what happened to them, you look at Black Wall Street, there's several other cities. I think Wilmington, Delaware, and Wilmington, North Carolina had a Black governmental structure, which was dismantled. Rosewood in Florida. So if let's say in a corporate America setting, and there's 10% or 5%, Blacks in there, if they congregate, let's say at lunch or dinner, and don't spread themselves around, there's talk at the table like, should we all be sitting together? Is this going to cause trouble for us by doing this, by separating or by joining together? So I think we have a healthy fear of not coming together, especially, in front of our employers or whomever.
Healthy fear and a unhealthy results. Jabari said 100 years this June 1st, 1921. So that's something I think that we need to remember and we need to blast out. Jermaine said, peace, family. Guys, we only have about 3 more minutes on the show. We're doing a very short segment today. So if you have any comments, throw them in now. Hate to cut you off like this, but some other things jumped off. But we will be back next week as well. So I guess, Elaine, if you want to close some things out, Kyle, if you want to say some things to close it out as well. Harriet Tubman and the Unknown Railroad. Fact or opinion? Truth or reality? Which one is it? Truth or falsehood?
Look, I will close with this sentiment. For those who watch trash TV, on the Real Housewives of Atlanta, there's this unforgettable scene where Portia Williams, who's the granddaughter of a great civil rights leader, Hosea Williams, they're at a church in Savannah, Georgia, and the pastor of the church says this was a place where the Underground Railroad, this was a stop on the Underground Railroad. And she says, well, where are the tracks, right? And everybody roasted her. They were like, oh my gosh, she's so stupid. The Underground Railroad didn't have tracks, right? But she raised an interesting point, maybe in her ignorance, or maybe it wasn't her ignorance. I don't know. All I know is we have to start asking some more questions, because all of this stuff, it just doesn't add up, does it? Sometimes we accept without questioning it. We have to start thinking more critically. Harriet Tubman, is she fully myth? I don't know. But what I do know is everything that was said about her is not true.
I know from my wife's parents, they're both from Mississippi, and I believe they both met in Chicago. So there was and from being married and learning the story, there seems like there was a big migration from Mississippi in particular to Chicago. Might have been other states and other cities as well. If a story like Harriet Tubman gave these people the power to jump on the back of a train or get in one of those cargo compartments to seek a better life, I think it was beneficial if one person escaped the South and how we were treated, and a lot of people went, to California and went west. So if it helped our people free themselves, live a better life, and live more peacefully, or some of our people that were able to do it. If that story inspired, I think it was a benefit.
Okay. Listen, hate to cut everyone off. Thank you, Elaine, and thank you, Kyle. Jermaine said they lied to us. He also said Underground Railroad by Harriet out there running through swamps. I'll say this in closing. ... did it, ... dash. Damned if I know. We'll see you guys next Wednesday. Peace.
Peace.